The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. First off, the Bitcoin Group would like to congratulate Kristov Atlas, regular contributor to the Bitcoin Group, on his new position at Blockchain.info. Way to go, Kristov, and congratulations to Blockchain for a great hire. Well done. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Blake Anderson, cryptographic economist.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Megan Lords from Bitcoin Not Bombs and Crypto Convos.
Good to be here.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Issue 1. Ross Ulbricht found guilty of all charges. A very sad day in the history of Bitcoin and the drug war, as Ross Ulbricht, accused of running the Silk Road website, a website that allowed large sellers of cannabis to sell it to large buyers without violence, was found guilty on all counts. The hitman charge, while used in the media to ruin his character, was actually not one of the crimes charged by the government. Blake Anderson, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's just, reputation has certain protections. Slander and libel and various laws are in place that you can't, damage somebody in a way that is going to negatively affect their life. When it comes to damaging the public's perception of an individual's action, like in this case, it's just like the most egregious violation of that I can imagine. So we have somebody that set up a completely free market, the Silk Road, and then he gets sentenced harshly when he did something that's supposed to be staunchly defended by both parties that are in power for government in this country, the Republican, the liberal, the conservative, the Democratic. Whichever party you're involved with, the cornerstone is the support of free markets. So somebody built a free market in this day and age, and this is what happens. I think it's very telling and very, very disturbing. So I think that the takeaway from this is that things are only going to get worse unless there can be a very strong appeal that has a basically reverse verdict.
Megan Lords.
So this is a really unfortunate thing, but I can't say that it's really surprising. I think a lot of people suspected that things would go this way because most of the public is not informed about things like jury nullification or even, getting into the philosophy of, whether or not these laws even are moral in the first place. And that takes a lot of, internal individual work that, I just don't know if society, the larger society is really there yet, is really ready for that. So, yeah, I can't say this is surprising. I mean, this was not a jury of his peers. Obviously, these people did not understand how the government found Ross Ulbricht and the methods that they were using at all. And though I will say, and this probably isn't a very popular thing to say, is that it looks like Ross was sloppy in some ways and ended up, making it easier to find him. He kept meticulous records of things, and he wasn't the most careful. And when you're operating a website like that, while it is a revolutionary thing to do, you have to take the utmost caution in doing so. And if you're getting lazy or you're getting prideful, maybe because you think that you can't be caught, especially if you recall some of the pieces that were written on Silk Road, at least when I first heard about it, it was like, oh, the government can't catch it, and it's this mysterious, ominous thing. And, it definitely added to the mystery and allure of Silk Road. And, of course, that's going to draw government attention. And, I'm wondering if there's maybe a degree of pride or something like that. Unfortunately, still, this is someone's life who's been ruined over, a nonviolent website, basically. He still has to face another trial in Maryland, and that's where you're probably going to see the murder for hire charges. So I don't expect that one to go too well for him. And yeah, all around, it's just really, it's a bad situation for him, and we'll see what happens with the appeal. I do know that they are going to appeal it because it was an unfair trial. I think that it was obvious that the judge was decided against him from the very beginning, even before the trial.
And we have what, like a 99% federal conviction rate? It's I think the takeaway here is somebody created the infrastructure to support a truly free market, and now they're in prison.
So a very unfortunate result of the trial. The defense did the best they could. Like Megan said, they weren't allowed to bring in Bitcoin witnesses. He was tried by a jury of his peers. Oh, did that include any computer scientists or any experts? No. Well, how were they his peers? I'm not sure. His political views were hidden from the trial. And of course, we've all, in this group, we've all met his mother. And of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to his family at this sad time. There is a person's life in the balance here. And while I'm sure his opponents would say that, of course, the drug market harmed people, I'm not sure that that harm presentation was a part of their trial presentation. I don't recall hearing from any victims of the Silk Road. But in general, the analysis done by scientists continues to stand. It was used by large sellers of cannabis to large buyers of cannabis without violence, which is something that's never been done before. I thought that jury nullification was the way to go. The president himself has rejected the drug war. All of the last previous presidents have admitted publicly to using cannabis, and I thought that would have been a stronger way to go, but the family, the jury, they were not allowed to do jury nullification. But, exit question. The FBI and the Justice Department have done their job. The internet will now be forever free of the scourge of drug-selling Bitcoin websites. True or false? Blake Anderson.
Oh, it's incontrovertibly false. I mean, it's like saying that you threw a stone into a river and that river will never flow south again. It's just absolutely absurd. So, just not 0 tenability. On a scale of 1 to 10, the tenability of that statement is 0.
0, absolute nothingness, not metaphysical certitude. Megan Lords, true or false?
False. There's already more websites that have popped up and that exist, and if anything, they're going to be more efficiently run and even harder to track down the founders of because of this case and what was revealed in it as far as maybe some of the mistakes that were made in the operation of the Silk Road. So, yeah, they're only going to become more efficient and more numerous as time goes on. There's really no stopping it, and, hopefully we'll see a public shift in opinion, against the drug war, because ultimately these things are not going away.
The answer is false. Issue 2. Fascinating article in The Observer detailing the sordid history of Ripple and Stellar and their company-hopping founder, at large, Jeb McCaleb, who also founded Mt. Gox. Wild details including a currency unit due to their desire to distance themselves from the Mt. Gox founder. Megan Lords, will we ever see a similar article about Satoshi Nakamoto? Is this rough start for Bitcoin 2.0 going to slow the projects down, or will they just put all this personal stuff in the past, shut the hell up, and get to work?
Well, I think, especially in the Bitcoin 2.0 space, things are a little tense right now, at least from what I've observed. It seems like there are a lot of scammers coming in and out, and there are a lot of scams in Bitcoin too. The space is kind of ripe for that kind of behavior. I think people are a bit on edge and concerned about the general direction of a lot of these other projects, and I think it's very hard to distance yourself from something if you're, especially something like Mt. Gox, if you were involved in that in any capacity. I think it's going to be very difficult to separate from that very, very bad reputation, and especially if you've been involved in multiple companies, like it appears McCaleb has, jumping around from companies, and maybe they don't have the best reputations either. So we'll see. I mean, that's not an indictment of his character. I certainly don't know this guy personally. But yeah, it's very hard to recover from that, and I guess it kind of remains to be seen. I think that it's not going to slow down other projects that are unrelated as a whole. I don't think 1 or 2 bad projects in the Bitcoin 2.0 space is going to necessarily affect everything else that's going on.
And remember, after McCaleb left with Magical Tux Mark Karpellis in charge, Mt. Gox did have funding. They could have hired additional people to come in and change their black box and reprogram it and perhaps prevent transaction malleability or internal theft or whatever happened to the Bitcoins, but he didn't. He kept it a one-man show. Blake Anderson, your thoughts on Stellar and Ripple? Oh my.
Well, Ripple is, great for remittance, is what people say. People say if you want to remit things across international barriers and send money around, then Ripple is a great protocol. So Gox had potential as an exchange. They had a lot of following, and they kind of fumbled that. Ripple had a lot of potential as a ability to engage in cheap remittance. It remains to be, I guess, still kind of seen if that is going to develop into something that's really, really a useful fundamental infrastructural layer of how finances work in the future. I think that the relationship damage between Ripple and Wells Fargo was a big roadblock in that direction. But then again, some people in the more decentralization-oriented camp might say, well, that's good. That's a blow to the ability of the new crypto systems. It damages the ability of the new crypto systems to engage in a top-down build fashion that's going to latch onto the systems of antiquity and possibly do some damage. I think a lot of people want to see ground-up building in the crypto space, so I think that people in that party or that camp might say, it's positive that there's, bad blood between, Ripple and Wells Fargo. If that is the case, if there is bad blood there, we have to take the good with the bad, and I think that the bad is more obvious, but the good that might be cheered for by the decentralization camp might be less easy to understand for the common person. So I guess I wanted to kind of illustrate why people might feel a certain way.
Exit question: Stellar, Ripple, or neither? Megan Lords.
I don't really know enough about either of them to make a choice on that, so I guess I'm going to have to say neither.
It's hard to really know the difference between Stellar and Ripple, other than that they gave me some free Stellar when I signed up. Either way, I've used both services about twice, logged in once, and I don't know what it's for. But it's still out there. The money's sitting out there, my precious Stellar, my precious Ripple. Blake Anderson.
Yeah, and I think it's when we ask questions like this, we should say, hopefully the answer to this question would be whichever company is working more readily towards decentralization of their, golden egg-laying goose. So it's kind of a double-edged sword moving towards decentralizing your own product, but we kind of have to demand that as a community, and if not, withdraw our support. So there is a kind of a demand on both sides of the fence here, as far as the community needs to demand move towards decentralization, and people that have power and stuff need to say, okay, we're getting a golden meal ticket right now, but we have to use the profits from that to move towards a decentralized model, because the old systems, the legacy systems of non-decentralized security don't work anymore. They don't work anymore. So we all kind of owe the quote-unquote greater good generalistic research in the areas of making things fundamentally secure. So hopefully, whichever one is moving towards decentralization.
Well, I've often heard Stellar described as a bank-friendly, or Ripple described as a bank-friendly cryptocurrency, so maybe it's not for us anyway. Speaking of other events that are not for us, Issue 3, Bitcoin elite to gather on secret island for Bilderberg-Style retreat. That was the CoinDesk headline that set the internet aflame. Perhaps a bit over the top. It sounds more like Jekyll Island and the secret founding of the Federal Reserve. Read your history. The story spread like wildfire, far and wide across the internet, to Alex Jones' Prison Planet, Ernie Hancock's Freedom Phoenix Show, and many other libertarian and freedom-loving outlets. The private meeting has now changed their mind, saying that video of the conference and reporting will be provided by one reporter from Why Bitcoin magazine. Apparently, CEOs often meet in private, and this is no big deal. Blake Anderson, is this just a sensationalist headline and a bit of an overreaction, or are Bitcoin CEOs meeting in private to drink the blood of babies and form a monopolistic cartel?
Well, the thing is, I don't think that this specific group of people is up to anything bad, but I can't just say, my anecdotal evidence about certain individuals means that they're beyond, criticism and things like that. So I thought that it was fine for the community to ask these people that are going to this retreat what's going to be going on there, what kind of accountability, blah, blah, blah. Are you going to be representing yourself or your company? And it seems like a lot of people got kind of upset. Mad Bitcoins was on Twitter and talking with Bruce Fenton and some other people who were pretty defensive. And I guess I can appreciate why they were defensive a little bit, because there was so much blowback from all around the internet. But at the same time, you have to realize that if a headline gets published like the one that was published, it's going to take legitimate questions and then you maybe give them a little bit harsher edge. But that doesn't mean that it takes the venom out of the legitimacy of those questions and I would have liked to see the defense of free speech, or maybe some more of the reasons that they wanted to get together and do this defended out in the open. A lot of the defenses seem to be, we have a right to privacy. Don't you think we have a right to privacy? And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, maybe give us a better reason than CEOs are afraid to criticize things in public, which was one of the only reasons given, which is fine. I can understand it, but at the same time, it's like, well, that doesn't make our our lot seem all that honorable in the context of other technologies. So I thought that was kind of thin.
And while the criticism may have gone too far, been kind of a Twitter storm, everything gets heated up in the moment, I did see a great comment on Reddit that really brought it together, that said basically with the libertarians, with the crypto anarchists, with the cyberpunks and the cypherpunks, you pretty much have the most paranoid people on earth. They're going to call you out if they think you're doing something wrong, because these are the people protecting the protocol. These are the people that are making Bitcoin work. It's a trustless currency for a reason. These are the people that brought you that lack of trust. These are the people hacking your hard drives, cracking your PGP. That's who we're talking about. They know what trust means, and it seemed off. Perhaps it was the CoinDesk headline. It was perhaps a little sensationalist, but just in the short term, hearing about it quickly, responding in the moment, it just seemed a little off. Megan Lords, your thoughts?
Why are we still freaking out about the tabloid of Bitcoin journalism? I mean, seriously, CoinDesk is a rag. It was obviously a sensationalist headline. It was so ridiculous. In fact, the thing is, most people don't always realize this if they're not in media, but when you approach someone with a story, or they find out about a story, even if they interview you, you have no control over how that story is going to be framed, and they may not even have the person writing it may not even have any control over the headline that gets written for it. So this is just a sensationalist headline. And you brought up Jekyll Island. I'm very familiar with that story. I don't think this is anything like that, because what happened on Jekyll Island was completely private, and no one knew about it. They didn't do this. They didn't do any interviews with tabloids telling people about it. And I really think this was a publicity stunt, for certain individuals who were interested in gaining more prominence in the space. And it was, made to, make some people feel good about themselves and, feel like they're in an exclusive club. And I think that's fine. I mean, I think it's a bit tacky maybe to say that you're having a private party on an island and only the cool kids are allowed. I think that's tacky more than anything else. But it's not harmful. To me, the more important questions aren't, who are the libertarians and anarchists meeting down in the Caribbean, but what are the strings attached to that $75 million that Coinbase just got? Where are the actual backroom deals going on at? Those aren't going to be in CoinDesk. Those aren't going to be in any kind of Bitcoin magazine or any kind of publication. The people who want to do real damage to Bitcoin are going to be meeting in private, and those are the people that you have to really be looking for. I think there was something to that Reddit comment about people being extremely paranoid, and I don't think it's warranted in this case at all. Again, I think this is maybe people trying to curry favor, with others. Or whatever it is, and maybe it's just a party, maybe it's just people wanting to get together. I've met several of the people on the list personally. Some of them are friends of mine, and I don't really see anything suspect about it. Again, if anything, it was just extremely tacky to go to CoinDesk expecting them to not write a sensationalist headline. And I think the lesson you can take away from this is, don't overreact to these ridiculous headlines. They're meant to troll you. They're meant to incite these kinds of feelings in people. And when you read something from CoinDesk, take a minute to process it and realize what their motives are. And, don't freak out, initially, because, it's not really productive. I don't think it's very productive getting into Twitter spats with people, even though some of the questions were valid. But the way they framed it was ridiculous and obviously just clickbaity. I mean, calling it the Bilderberg. These are not I'm sorry, the libertarians and anarchists are not the Bilderberg people of Bitcoin. They're like the outside, people yelling with bullhorns at Bilderberg, if anything. So no, the real dangerous people people who are trying to take out Bitcoin or, maybe plotting against. I don't want to be overly paranoid, but you're not going to see them talking about it or doing interviews in the news.
I just wanted to point out that in my line of work as a math-based security information scientist, paranoia is everything. You got to be super paranoid. So this space and the paranoia that's required to work in math-based security and to identify attack vectors, it just shocks me that people were surprised that the community asked questions. And maybe they weren't surprised. Maybe that's the wrong word for it. But maybe they were shocked by the amount of questions on Twitter and on Reddit and on Facebook and in personal messages. I guess that we should all be aware of the fact that we do have a lot of quote unquote paranoid people, because that's what math-based security is. It's the most hyper application of paranoia ever conceived of applied to technology.
Well, do you think there's anything to that Bruce Fenton is running for the foundation board, and maybe this is just an effort to make bring a lot of people with influence around him as kind of a support mechanism for that?
Yeah, and it definitely could be that, for sure. I think that it would have been a lot better for his reputation had he just said that. Maybe he did say that and I missed it, but I think that I've been a fan of Bruce for a long time. I've talked about him in this show several times, at various different points. And I think that his reputation was hurt a lot by the way that he handled the questions around this, because the people that were asking questions, maybe they were trolly or whatever, but they were really people that do care about Bitcoin. So I think it was damaging to his reputation a little bit. Maybe not with the people that he needs, but with the general community. So I thought that was a shame.
It came across as a bit abrasive. Yeah, I'll agree with that. And I've met Bruce too. I mean, he spoke at one of the conferences I organized, and seems like a decent guy who's wanting to go in a good direction with things. But yeah, we'll see. I'm not afraid of. Let's just say I'm not afraid of any of the people who are meeting on that island. Like, I don't think they're involved in any nefarious plot.
Oh no, me neither. I insisted that you call Bruce to talk to him about Coins in the Kingdom. I think he's a really good guy. So.
Yeah.
I think Megan's got some good points. It was definitely tacky, and if they were looking for publicity out of the CoinDesk article, they certainly got publicity. But it goes both ways. You get the good publicity, you get the bad publicity. The questions are there. But exit question: will they do this again next year? Yes or no? Blake Anderson.
Hopefully they do it again next year, and they have the funds to do it. Hopefully they tell kind of people what they're doing, what their goal is with the privacy a little bit better next year or something. And I don't know exactly what to demand, but hopefully less defensiveness.
Megan Lords.
I have no idea. I mean, this kind of seems like a private party where a bunch of people are getting together, and yeah, I mean, I can't really say. It's strange. I think you're seeing a decrease in. You're probably going to see a lot of decrease in conferences and stuff, just as far as the price. And I'm not even sure that the conferences are really very productive at this time in Bitcoin right now. And I say that having organized 2 of them. I don't think they're as productive as far as getting the word out to people. Whereas private meetings amongst friends, and I think anyone could do this. I mean, in Bitcoin, I think that having like a brain trust of people might be a more valuable way to approach things, just to kind of clarify goals and kind of find allies and find out who's on the same page as you with things. And that's kind of what this looks like to me. Is these people all seem fairly like-minded.
I think you're right, Megan. I would start with a bottom-up approach. I would go to the meetup groups. I think that the meetup groups are where the real power of Bitcoin are, and if you were going to look for the support of the community in running for the Bitcoin Foundation, I would start at the meetup groups, not at these top-level people. So we'll see how they go. Will they do it again next year? I think yes, and we'll recreate this whole event like Groundhog Day. We'll argue on Twitter. We'll do the whole thing next year. So put that on your calendars, people. Issue 4, Nakamoto's. San Francisco's first Bitcoin retail space opens for business. Andrew Lee, the founder of Purse.io, is dedicated to making San Francisco the real capital of Bitcoin, starting with Nakamoto's, a store that offers a 10% discount on Amazon prices if you pay in Bitcoins. The store was funded not by venture capital, but as a loan on peer-to-peer lending platform BTC Jam. Megan Lords, your thoughts on Nakamoto's. Will a 10% discount spur consumers to spend their Bitcoins? Can we just fund Bitcoin retail ourselves?
Well, what I do like about this is how it was funded. I think that's really interesting, and I do like that they give such a huge discount. I mean, 10% is quite a bit, especially on something like Amazon that already discounts things pretty heavily, from what I've seen. But yeah, I'd like to see more, internal funding coming from people, within the space and not necessarily from, venture capitalists. And I think it sounds like a pretty good idea. I think San Francisco is a really good location to do this in. We were talking earlier, you were saying there's not a lot of places who take Bitcoin in San Francisco, despite it being such a Bitcoin hub. So, I wish them the best. I think it's a great idea. And yeah, I'd love to see more Bitcoin retailing. Now, as far as people spending more, I'm not sure that you're going to see much more of that until the price kind of recovers a bit, until it starts going back up. I think people are still kind of, holding their Bitcoins right now, and they're kind of a little bit nervous. We're still in that kind of cautionary phase where people are kind of waiting to see what happens. So I think you're going to see people spending more Bitcoin when the price starts raising.
Blake Anderson.
I think it's a cool idea. I would be curious to see how they're giving the discount, how their business model works, and if they have a tenable ROI plan and things like that. I think that hopefully they do. And having a physical brick and mortar location to get Bitcoin stuff, it's a pretty cool idea. So a tenable business model, I give it a big thumbs up. I think it's a really cool thing to do.
It also said in the article they're going to have a BTM, a Bitcoin teller machine, so you could trade your fiat currency there and then get Bitcoins to use in the store. I'm not sure that the store actually takes cash. I'm pretty sure it's a Bitcoin-only store. So that BTM is a very important part of this idea. Exit question. In the future, will we see more or less Bitcoin-funded businesses and entrepreneurs? Megan Lords.
Well, I think in the long term, hopefully we'll see more. But in the short term, I think people are still, like I said earlier, just really cautious and waiting things out.
Blake Anderson.
Yeah, I agree. In the long term, I think that yes, I think that right now people are going to be cautious until the next block halving.
Moving on to questions and answers. There's still a chance to get your questions in for questions and answers. Starting with Eric Russo, in no particular order. There are no 2.0 projects. They are all vaporware, bullshit, scam platforms. An interesting point. Kind of links in Ethereum, MadeSafe, Storage, Counterparty, Ripple, Stellar. They're all pretty questionable right now. Some have released projects, some have released white papers, others have not. They're all, we don't know. It's, we don't know who the winner is going to be. We're going to sit back and wait. What do you guys think? Blake?
Well, yeah, there's some functional software out there, so it's not really a completely true statement. But the unfortunate thing is that, like, I know what he means. It's like kind of like, yeah, it's more true than not true. So I think that's kind of how I want to paint it.
Yeah, Bitcoin 2.0 is much like altcoins, where you're just not sure about them until they're finished, and then even then you're still not sure. Megan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to see more tangible services and products coming out of that Bitcoin 2.0 sector before I'm really going to, believe in it, I guess. I definitely see where he's coming from with it thinking everything's vaporware. I could see that because right now, I mean, a lot of it is. So yeah, I think it's good to be extremely skeptical with these new companies coming out.
So, and anybody that doesn't know the lingo, like vaporware or ghostware, what they mean is like if you like the Duke Nukem Forever game, except for it never ends up coming out in the long run. Like Duke Nukem Forever ended up coming out. It was bad, but like it did come out. Vaporware or ghostware is something that people work on and talk about, but then never ends up happening or going anywhere.
And this is also part of the Darwinian software process. We kind of have to do this as a science experiment. There needs to be survival of the fittest. People need to try these new ideas, and some of them need to succeed, some of them need to failure. That's just how it's going to be. So
survival is the exception and not the rule, and that doesn't change just because we go virtual.
Yep. So hold on. Let's see what else we've got. Infinite Radio. Exit question. With the price deflating from the 2013 bubble, people in developing countries can actually afford to buy a good amount of Bitcoin And these are the people who truly get the adoption ball rolling. Is the great Satoshi still guiding us? Well, there's a slightly two different questions. What do you guys think, Blake? First question, second question?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, the first, like, yeah, adoption is great. Let's get the ball rolling on people able to purchase Bitcoin preceding the block halvings. I think that maybe there's more thought that went into that than people are attributing to the monetary policy of Bitcoin. As far as people still following Satoshi, I don't know. I think a lot of people have gotten way far away from working within the scope of the white paper that he wrote in 2008. I think that people should revisit the white paper and try to work in the scope within that scope. I think that no, not many people are still following Satoshi, and that's that it's important that we do.
Megan Lords.
Yeah, to their first question, I think that's interesting, and I think it kind of goes in line with a ground-up approach. I think people in developing countries really need a more a lot of times they need a more stable currency. I hope Bitcoin stable. It already has stabilized quite a bit, even though the price is low. And I think it's something that's going to bring a lot of opportunity to a lot of people. And I think a good slow mass adoption is definitely preferable to an overnight adoption. I want to see people getting into Bitcoin who are taking their time to learn about it and who are going to be educated about it and use it in that way. As far as Satoshi still guiding us, I mean, it's been put out there. Bitcoin's been put out there, and he basically took his hands off and was like, just take it. I think the white paper is an excellent resource. It's something that I think should be adhered to, for people in the space, but ultimately it's out of his hands, and I think he knew that, or they knew that when they created it. This is not some tyrannical godlike figure who wants an iron fist, and Bitcoin has to be a certain way. I mean, they released it anonymously with a purpose and also multiple purposes, and it's something that I think to consider. I don't think I think one of the reasons Satoshi remained anonymous was because he didn't want to appear to be like this godlike figure. He didn't want people idolizing him in any kind of way. He wanted people to make use of the technology in the best way that they can.
And much like George Washington, what we can admire about most with Satoshi is his example and his humility, the ability to walk away from this project and let people choose. You can choose if you want to follow Satoshi. If you think decentralization is cool, if you like open, verifiable ledgers, and you think that's a cool technology, you're in. If you disagree, you don't like that, that's fine. You can do that as well. Satoshi doesn't judge. That's not his way. So I think it's a really great example, and I do agree with you. Adoption might go better in other countries. As Infinite Radio, the questioner says in a follow-up, he says, Americans don't need bitcoins like Greece needs bitcoins, among other countries.
Oh, I'm going to have to disagree with that. I very vehemently disagree with that. I think that Greece needs it too, but I think that the entire world is in a fiat debt crisis, and it's like a sinking ship. And Bitcoin is like lifeboats, and the ship is sinking. Make no mistake about it. There's a song by a band called NoFX called Rico, and the beginning is it's kind of like a Jamaican reggae song. It's about this house that's just been completely destroyed. All the faucets are overflowing, and somebody vomited into the fish tank, and all the dog bowls are full of X-Lax and stuff, just like the most wild party ever. And it's just like the house is destroyed. And the song is really slow and about how they need to get up and get out of there because the house is trashed and it's never going to be used for anything again. And then the song flips over at the end, and it's all basically a comparison to the financial system and to the world and to what we've done with our various different credit systems. So the Titanic is sinking, and Bitcoin are the lifeboats. And it's a harsh thing to say, but I've seen no evidence that that's not the case.
And it's probably just a sliding scale. Greece might need it more percentage-wise. America still needs it. We all need it and what it could deliver.
Yeah, Greece is farther along, so yeah, I mean, from that kind of a standpoint, they have less military-industrial complex nonsense to fall back on. So,
next question, Eric says, Ripple, but he's spelling Ripple like rest in peace. Ripple is going to bring malleability to the Federal Reserve. Oh, and Ripple until the GRB UFU. I'm not sure what he means there, but I just think he's kind of mocking Ripple and their ability to bring peace to the banks at last. Eric also writes and says that the Silk Road trial was about one thing: containment of competition. The CIA and the DEA hate competition. I think that's a pretty valid point. A lot of people are agreeing with that out there. There's, of course, the Afghanistan war. Afghanistan famously the home of 90% of the world's heroin. You can say what you want about that. You can read more about it, or you can ignore it. There's been a lot of interesting stories about the CIA and importing drugs into this country in the past. So you can read about that or not.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk when something like the CIA that has a license to to kill can do things like selling drugs or weapons or other things like that. What then happens is you have a situation where you have an entity that can kill and can self-fund. That's what creates a shadow government, and it's very possible, and not just possible, almost documented and evidenced, that the CIA has become a shadow government and does have to make concessions to and deal with the government, who has to make concessions to the CIA as well. So that's a very, very dangerous situation, and I agree that the competition that would have been brought to the CIA or various different collectivist violence-based monopolies was very much threatened by a free marketplace, and that's the scary, horrifying truth of what happens to somebody that invents the infrastructure for a truly free market today. And when you step back and really realize the horror of that situation, I mean, that's pretty fucking awful.
Yeah, let's not pretend that the government wouldn't want in on the extreme profits you can make in a black market. So, I think, like Thomas said, you can read into some of these things, and they're very interesting. And I think this is a kind of an Occam's razor thing. Obviously, they would be dealing drugs and doing gun running, all of the other things that government agencies are known for. So, yeah, the government participates in black market activity as often as they try to stop it.
I think this is also a really interesting situation where the emperor has no clothes. The punishments brought down, and certainly Ross Ulbricht's life is probably ruined, but if you look at the reality here in David versus Goliath terms, one little man, one little David, made this incredible black market that almost took down Goliath. If there were 5 other men like him, there'd be 5 other black markets, and there are on the internet. So it's really kind of exposing a hole here where, once again, it's the demand of Americans for illegal drugs that creates the drug war, that creates the black market. Colombia the country, not anything else, but Colombia the country was all about how, we're not doing it. We're just meeting your demand. You demand it. If you'd stop demanding it, we could grow other things or have cows. There's options.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like Ross was in this prison system, and like he was discovered carving, his inalienable natural rights onto a rock somewhere, and the guards saw that, and they were like, "That is the true nature of dangerous. Get him out of here and make an example of him, because if we allow that to proceed, that is going to bring everything that we're doing down." And that's the reality of the situation. It's truth is dangerous.
It is. And we've got a couple more comments. Infinite Radio writes back and says, Blake, the ships are going to take years to sink. Some countries are going to drown first. So I like this fiat currency global warming analogy we've got going here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not saying that Greece is in a better financial situation than America.
I agree. We've got a good. And also, Eric writes, Baby Bloody Marys for the win. So he's picking up on our joke here. And again, we're being satirical, we're kidding, we're joking, it's fun. You're taking the guy in the silly hat far too seriously. A lot of the times, if I bring something up, it seems a little outlandish. It's outlandish because that's what humor is. It's an unexpected comment.
Gotta lampoon this shit with satire. With satire. You can't even pronounce the words correctly that you're talking about, and then it becomes a really good show.
See, the worse it is, the funnier it gets. So, Baby Bloody Marys. And we're moving on to predictions or story of the week. Blake Anderson, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Well, my prediction is that there's going to be a lot of egg on the face of the community, and the best thing that we can do is wipe the egg and the embarrassment off of our face by calling out scams and by being brave and by saying what you really think, and not by kowtowing to these connection points to the legacy system. Like if you want to try to build a top-down system for a quick buck and then bring it into Bitcoin, I mean, it's kind of our job to call you out a little bit unless you're going to help the technology. So it's nothing personal, but my prediction is that there's going to be a lot more scamming and a lot more calling out. And the companies that get called out that want to continue to decentralize, what they can do is they can use the call outs to get objective information about their company, and they can improve. And the companies that resort to ad hominem and cutting off the community, we will be able to identify those companies as companies that don't want to work with the community and deliver something that we can all use. So my prediction is that there's going to be a lot more strife, but that it will be very, very important.
And the specter of Mount Gox will always hang over us. I remember Losky describing it as his 9/11, and in many ways it's all of ours 9/11. A lot of people lost money, and no one really called them out. So we need to be more careful next time. Megan Lords, a prediction or a story of the week.
I definitely agree with what Blake said, but I'm going to make a prediction, and that's if we don't start really going after these clickbaity, ridiculous headlines from CoinDesk, that by the year 2018 they'll take over, and that'll basically be like the idiocracy of Bitcoin. Like, don't let this happen. Bitcoin media is young, just like Bitcoin is, and I think high ethics and journalism need to be taken into account, and if people aren't practicing that, they should be shunned. You shouldn't read their publications, and you should try your best to find reputable sources of news that aren't trying to sensationalize things, and that aren't just also, I mean, a lot of the stuff on CoinDesk too is just very, it's fluff pieces, or, there needs to be more investigative journalism, and there needs to be more, more stringent approach to, going after some of these scams, like Blake said. And it's not an easy job to do, and it's not fun to do, and you don't win a lot of friends doing it, but it is something that if we want Bitcoin to look like it has any credibility to the outside public, it's something that we're going to have to do internally.
True that. Good point, Megan. And finally, not a prediction, but a hiatus. I will be taking a hiatus from making shows to work on a project that is very important to me, and in my opinion, important to the future of Bitcoin and the success and the creation of a new Bitcoin economy. I'm unable to release any details at this time, but I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Oh, we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.